Subway was once one of the most dominant fast food restaurants in the world, and at its peak it had more locations than McDonald's. But after several years of declining sales, store closures, bankruptcies, and lawsuits, the brand is now a cautionary tale for all entrepreneurs, but especially those looking to buy a franchise. So how did Subway rise to the top and then completely lose its crown? And what lessons can you and I take away from this before we invest in a franchise? That's exactly what I'm going to walk through in this video. And if you're new here, my name is Connor Gross. I'm a multi-brand franchise owner as well as a franchise consultant who helps entrepreneurs and investors to find the right franchise for them. For access to my library of franchise breakdowns and free resources, click the link in the description. So let's start in 1965, and that's when Fred DeLuca, who was a 17-year-old college student at the time, borrowed $1,000 from a family friend to open a sandwich shop in Bridgeport, Connecticut. His goal was to pay for college, and the first store was called Pete's Super Submarines. And this really resonates with my franchise story because my goal in starting my first franchise was to be able to build it up, get it to be cash flow positive, and eventually pay for me to go to law school. But then after I built it up and it was making money, I was like, why would I go to law school? Let's just do more of this instead. And it sounds like that was a similar story for Fred DeLuca because the Submarines got off to a hot start and he decided to scale through franchising. And he had a compelling case to make for it. And the focus was a low startup cost and simple operations because unlike most restaurants, Subway actually doesn't cook anything. And this doesn't only simplify operations and supply chain, but it also allows them to operate out of a much smaller space. So when you think about a Subway versus a McDonald's, even though Subway can still serve ready-to-eat meals, McDonald's have a lot more square footage, a freestanding location, much more expensive to build out than a Subway. By the 1990s, Subway expands globally and becomes a staple in malls, gas stations, and urban corners. By the early 2000s, Subway was completely and totally on fire. And in 2013, they passed McDonald's in the number of locations they had open. The brand awareness was incredibly strong, and they were known for successful marketing initiatives, including Jared Fogel's Subway Diet, where he shared his story of losing 245 pounds by eating Subway. And this marketing initiative propelled Subway to the forefront of the healthy food craze. And then there was the $5 footlong. This marketing initiative propelled Subway to the forefront of the affordable food craze. Their business seemed completely indestructible. But as we all know now, it was not. The rapid expansion led to stores cannibalizing each other's businesses and left franchisees struggling with high overhead and having too many stores and thin margins. And if they were even making any money at all. Subway faced more competition, not just from additional sandwich brands like Jimmy John's and Jersey Mike's, both of which I would say are indisputably better than Subway, but from legacy brands like McDonald's and Chick-fil-A and Wendy's, all of which rolled out healthy food menu items. And then along came the bowls from concepts like Chipotle, and they emerged as a competitor to the sandwich industry at large. All of these things completely eroded Subway's market share. And the $5 footlong, that screwed them too, because while it brought people in the door, it was absolutely obliterating the profit margin for franchisees. Oh, and by the way, Jared, he had some problems too. So we'll leave it at that. Anyway, as far as I'm concerned, the Subway as a franchise opportunity is completely and totally dead. But the lesson I want to leave you with today isn't just don't buy a Subway, but it's what can we learn from the story of Subway to ensure that you don't buy into a franchise that is on track to becoming the next Subway. So let's start with lesson number one, and that is to watch out for misaligned incentives. I talk about this concept even outside of the context of Subway. I call this the $5 footlong problem because everybody knows the $5 footlong and everybody can process what this means. Because when Subway rolled out the now famous $5 footlong promotion in 2008, it was a hit with customers and it boosted system-wide sales. And what this did is it meant more royalties flowing to Subway corporate because franchisors make money from gross revenue, not profit. But the catch is that most franchisees weren't making a lot of money on those $5 subs. The food, the labor, the overhead costs made the promotion unprofitable for them. So even though corporate loved it because more sales meant more royalties, franchisees hated it because they were losing their margin. And this is one of the most fundamental misalignments of incentives you see in franchising because the franchisor wins on revenue while the franchisees win on profit and enterprise value, which is a derivative of profit. And so anybody who has owned a small business will tell you that revenue and profit are not the same thing and they should be viewed very different. You always need to be mindful of this when you're looking at franchises to ensure that the franchisors are supporting you in driving profitability and not just more revenue, which is to their short-term benefit. Lesson number two is that unit density can absolutely kill you because Subway's growth strategy, as we talked about, was to put locations everywhere. Sometimes this meant multiple stores within the same small town or even on the same street. I remember when I was in high school, we weren't supposed to leave school in the middle of the day to go to lunch, but sometimes we would sneak off and do it, and we would have to stand there in the parking lot and clarify which Subway we were going to because there was 2 minutes that way, 2 minutes this way, and this was not even a big city. And so, but the point is it didn't matter. Subway had locations everywhere. everywhere. On paper, you might think that more stores would be a good thing for the brand overall because there's more to go around, but for Subway franchisees, it meant cannibalization, which meant that your competition wasn't only other sandwich shops, but it was the other Subway down the block. You might even own the other Subway down the block. When you open it, it's drawing more revenue from the one that you already owned. The lesson here is you have to ensure that franchise territories have been drawn in a way that's intentional and that ensures that there's enough of your ideal customer relative to the amount of market share that you need to be successful. So you should look for brands that balance growth with territory protection. And a good franchise should care about your store level success and not just how many dots they can plop on a map or how much revenue they can drive to the top line. Lesson number 3 we can take from Subway is that you should look for strong unit economics and mainly focus on cash flow per store. So as I mentioned, part of Subway's value proposition to prospective franchisees from the beginning was the low investment. So they would say, come open these stores for a very low amount of money, and because they're relatively inexpensive to open, you can open a bunch of them. And so this led a lot of franchisees to open a lot of locations, sometimes 10, 15, 20 or more locations. And while I like franchises that want multi-unit owners, and I think that there's a lot of value to be created in becoming a multi-unit owner, I don't like franchises where you have to open a ton of different units, 10, 15 different units just to make decent money. And that was the case with Subway. Because of the low ticket size, the thin margins, the cash flow per store of a Subway is pretty low. And so the lesson is when researching a franchise, focus on what one unit can produce. And personally, I would rather own one location of a franchise that cost $1 million to start and makes $250K a year than 5 locations that cost $200K each to start and make $50K each per year. Even though in those two scenarios that I outlined, the numbers work out the same way, one is by far greater than the other because I would rather drive more cash flow out of the same 4 walls than have people scattered around at a bunch of different locations, all things considered. The bottom line is that a lower investment isn't always better, and you should always evaluate the investment level within the context of the amount of money that the locations tend to make in that franchise. So, to anybody considering getting into franchise ownership, I hope I have made clear that as we sit here today in 2025, Subway is not the move. But the good news is that there are still great opportunities out there with stronger unit economics, better competitive landscapes, and altogether just much stronger opportunities. So, if you have a net worth of at least $250,000 and at least $100K of liquid capital to invest, you'd like my help finding a franchise, click the link in the description to line up a one-on-one strategy call with me directly. And as always, please like this video, subscribe to this channel, and drop a comment letting me know what franchise you would like to hear about next.